Hey folks, this is Astus from Astus Guides, back for the first time with a Baldur's Gate 3 class review. For the next 30 minutes, I am not just your favorite up-and-coming CRPG analyst, no. I am a preacher of the message, and the message is thus: Clerics are S tier. It will not be easy, but I am calling for you to cast off Asterion. Suffer him not to live, for he is a lusty agent of evil. Instead, embrace the healing word of Shadowheart into your party, for there is no other power in Baldur's Gate 3 through which you might be saved from reloads. That's right, folks. Today we are talking about the Cleric, and I've got to tell you, I'm so excited about this one, because in my opinion, the Cleric is a defining class for 5th edition tactics. What do I mean by that? I mean that the things that this class can do have so much gravity to them that it naturally warps the other roles around them. You should build around your Cleric. If that's still not making sense, stick with me, I will explain it all in this video. Diving into the class's base statistics, as we do, we start out with hit points. The Cleric has a 1d8 hit point progression. That means they're going to be getting 8 hit points plus their Constitution modifier at level 1, and then 5 plus their Constitution modifier every level thereafter. The 1d8 hit point progression is kind of average. It's like the vanilla option. It's neither bad nor good, so we don't need to say anything else about it. For saving throws, they get Wisdom and Charisma. Wisdom is a fantastic saving throw, probably the most important saving throw, except on caster classes, which the Cleric is. For caster classes, you want Constitution just a little bit more, because that is a saving throw that you need to make to maintain concentration. We'll discuss that too. But Wisdom is a close second for the most important saving throw, and Clerics get it. Charisma is a nothing. It's just, you won't even notice it. I barely notice it. There's so few things that target the Charisma saving throw. One of them actually is this spell here, Bane, which is a potent debuff, so it's good for that, I guess. But other than Bane, I really can't think of anything else that targets Charisma, and you don't want a whole saving throw proficiency at level 1 just to resist a single spell. For armor weapon proficiencies, Clerics get Light and Medium, which, as we discussed last video, is all you need. Medium is the best armor in early access right now. They also get shields, which is very good. Shields are, of course, a defensive item type, and striker classes will typically want to go with something that gives them more damage, great weapons or dual wielding. But for casters, you really want shields, because a lot of their damage comes from spells anyways, and you don't need your offhand to cast a spell. At least not in Larian's take on 5th edition. So what shields do is give you more armor class to avoid hits. Avoiding hits means avoiding concentration checks. You get the idea. For casters, it's so important to maintain concentration. For weapons, they get simple weapons, which are just fine. There's some good simple weapons in the game. The best one is probably Shattered Flail, which is a mace that you can get fairly early on. If you had martial weapon proficiency, Clerics would want to use, probably your best option is the Warhammer Faithbreaker, and you can actually get that if you pick a dwarf as your race. Dwarves get a Warhammer proficiency. So, gold dwarves also get Constitution and Wisdom, the two most important stats for Clerics. So gold dwarves make excellent Clerics. Cleric cantrips are just fine. Basically, there's two that you want. There's Guidance, which is absolutely incredible, but doesn't have a lot of utility in combat. The same goes for Thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy is a great skill cantrip, but doesn't do anything in combat. So taking both of these will help you and your team with their outside of combat tasks all around, but don't do much other than that. Their combat cantrips are really mediocre. They are resistance, which you don't need because you'll be casting Bless. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. And Sacred Flame, which is a save spell, and save spell cantrips are not good. So just don't cast it. The really important thing for this class are their spells, and not just their spells, particularly their level 1 spells. Cleric level 1 spell list is insane. I wish I could talk about each of these. What am I saying? I have talked about each of these. You can find it on my website. If you go to the spell tier list, I discuss and rank every single spell available in early access, and of course it includes every single cleric spell. So if you're interested in what I have to say about each of these, go there. But for this video, we only need to highlight a few of the really key ones, the really S tier spells. So let's discuss them. The first one we have to talk about is Bless. Bless is a party buff. It requires your concentration. And now is a good time to explain what this mechanic does for beginners to the system. Some spells require your concentration. Concentration is like an action slot. You can only have one thing taking up your concentration at a time. So if there are 2 spells that you want to cast and both require concentration, you will have to settle for just one. While you're concentrating on a spell, there is an effect of that spell that will subsist. And it subsists for typically a certain amount of turns. In the case of Bless, 10. And as long as you're concentrating on it. And things can break your concentration. If you take damage while you're concentrating, you have to make a concentration save, which, as we said, is a Constitution saving throw to maintain your concentration. I won't go into all of the details about what the DC is for it, but just what you need to know is maintaining concentration drastically affects the value of your spell slots. Because if something cancels your concentration early on in a spell, you didn't get that much effect out of it. So Bless is one of these spells that takes up that action slot. What does it do, though? Well, when you cast it as a level 1 spell, up to 3 creatures receive 1d4 bonus on all attack rolls and saving throws that they make while you are maintaining the spell. This is so incredible. Getting bonuses to attack rolls and saving throws is pretty difficult in 5th edition. This is because of what is called the flattened math of 5th edition. They like to keep bonuses in low numbers. A 1d4 bonus will average to about a 2.5 bonus on every attack roll and every saving throw. The really important one is attack rolls, because there are ways in Baldur's Gate 3 to sack your accuracy for large boosts to damage. And this trade-off pays off, but it pays off even more when you are boosting accuracy, because the negative that you receive to accuracy can be mitigated, and then you get all the bonuses from the damage, and your DPR just takes off. So you should always look really carefully at boost accuracy, and one of the main ones is Bless. However, the boost to saving throws is also very important. Saving throws, of course, resist all kinds of crowd control effects that can cripple your team. I mean, destroy an encounter. You need to resist those with saving throws, and Bless helps. I've also talked about Constitution saving throws to maintain concentration, and Bless helps with those. So if you, the cleric casting Bless, make sure to include yourself as one of those 3 creatures that is buffed, you actually get the Bless bonus to your own concentration saves to maintain Bless. So it helps itself out in that regard. But all of your other casters too that depend on concentration will benefit a lot from Bless. You know, getting proficiency in a saving throw is a +2 bonus. Getting Bless is on average 2.5. So just a tad better than proficiency in a saving throw. And proficiencies in a saving throw are also really hard to come by. I mean, I could gush about this spell for a while, but there are other spells to talk about, so let's move on. The other very important one is this spell right here, Healing Word. Healing Word is a heal. Okay? It competes as a heal with another level 1 spell, Cure Wounds. Now here's the thing. Cure Wounds sucks. Don't cast it. Just cast Healing Word instead. Why? Well, what's the difference between them? Healing Word heals less. It heals 1d4 plus your Wisdom modifier, whereas Cure Wounds heals 1d8 plus your Wisdom modifier. However, look at the range. Cure Wounds heals at a 2-meter range. That's basically melee range. Healing Word, by comparison, can be cast at 18-meter range. So it's a ranged healing spell. Nice. The really important thing for Healing Word, though, is the action that it takes. Healing Word takes a bonus action. Cure Wounds, a full action. Being able to heal someone in a bonus action is so important because in 5th edition, the value of healing isn't really in the numerical value of the heal. I would say 80% of the effectiveness of a heal comes with just healing 1 hit point, because 1 hit point is all you need to raise a fallen enemy and get them back in the fight. Once your hit points reach 0, you will be making saving throws, but a heal, even a heal of 1, will bring you back into the fight. With Healing Word, you can do this as a bonus action and still have your main action to attack people. Now, mathematically, this is so important to your odds of success. I discuss it in more detail both in my class review and in my spell review on my website, so go there, but just take my word for it. What this means is you can basically, in this system, forego defense for offense, because Healing Word will be your defense. It will make sure that nobody on your team dies. That's why Reckless Attack for the Barbarian, which we discussed last week, is so good. It trades offense for defense, and in a system where there's Healing Word in the game, that is a good trade. That's what I mean by this being a tactics-defining class. The reason, just having this one spell completely warps what you do with the rest of your characters, because now you want to invest more in offense rather than defense, because Healing Word is just sufficient for defense. Okay, we've talked about Bless, Healing Word. What else can I say? Should I go over Create Water? Yeah, let's do that too. There's just one last spell to discuss, Create Water. This spell is so easily overlooked because it is a Larian addition. I mean, technically Create Water is in Tabletop 5th edition, but Larian have changed it a lot. When you cast Create Water in this game, you summon a relatively small area of water, which gets everybody in that area wet. Wet is a condition. The main thing that wet does is targets that are wet are vulnerable to lightning and cold damage. What does vulnerability do? It just doubles your damage from those sources. It doubles your damage from those sources, guys. It's like a free crit. There's no saving throw to resist Create or Destroy Water, by the way. It just happens and it lasts for 2 turns, which isn't a long duration, but you can deal a lot of lightning and cold damage in 2 turns, and you're doubling all that damage. It's so good. This spell completely wrecks. And if that wasn't enough, there's a defensive application for it too, because wet targets that are wet also have resistance to fire damage. So you can cast it on your own team. If you're facing a wizard that's going to be throwing fireballs, you'll be having the damage from fireballs. It's amazing. It shouldn't even be a level 1 spell, but it is, so cast it. Now we are at level 2. At level 2, clerics get another first level spell slot, and then they also unlock their Channel Divinity feature. It's easiest to think of Channel Divinity as like a special kind of spell slot in its own right. It's special for 2 reasons. 1, because it can only be used to cast Channel Divinity spells. And 2, because, unlike the other spell slots that clerics get, it refreshes on a short rest, not a long rest. Nevertheless, in the early levels, like we're in early access, you only get 1 Channel Divinity spell slot. But since it refreshes on a short rest, you can think of it as 3 per long rest. Okay. They also unlock their first Channel Divinity spell and kind of the cleric default. That is Turn Undead. Turn Undead is a very potent control spell, but it only works on undead creatures. So what does it do? Well, when you cast this, all undead within 9 meters of you and within your line of sight must make a wisdom saving throw. If they fail that wisdom saving throw, they are forced to use their action to flee from you. This is not the same as it is in tabletop 5th edition. The way Larian has implemented this, the undead aren't frightened of you, they just have to flee from you for 3 turns or until they take damage. And they'll probably take damage right away because the best use of this spell is to use them running from you as a method for proccing attacks of opportunity against them. And this is why it's so potent. For every target that fails their saving throw, they're going to run away, which expends 1 action, and then you're going to get an opportunity attack, weaponizing your reaction, which is extremely good in 5th edition. Reactions, you don't usually get a lot of use out of them except with opportunity attacks. So finding a way to force these opportunity attacks does wonders for your action economy. So that's it for the cleric base class. And I can't believe I went through the whole thing without saying at the beginning what its tactical role is. You can probably guess. The tactical role of a cleric is primarily support. They offer very, very powerful team buffs like Aid, Bless, and to a certain extent, Create Water. The secondary role of a cleric is controlling through spells like Bane or Hold Person. And in this role, as I said in my intro, the cleric is S tier. But that's the base class. What about its subclasses? Cleric subclasses are called domains, and you can actually pick them at level 1. In Baldur's Gate 3 Early Access, so far we have access to 3 domains: Life, Light, and Trickery. Let's go through them one at a time, beginning with Life Domain. Each domain, when you pick it at level 1, is going to give you a class feature, a standalone class feature at level 1. It's also going to give you a unique Channel Divinity spell at level 2. And then it's going to give you 2 spells that you automatically know. And some of these spells will be in the cleric spell list, and some won't. So which spells you get access to with your domain is very important to the flavor of that domain. And of course, you will get 2 of these each time you learn a new spell level, So we'll get 2 at level 1, and then we'll get 2 more at level 3. Let's talk about Life Domain level 1. At level 1, it's going to get heavy armor proficiency, which is whatever. As I've said, heavy armor is not that good. Then its standalone feature is called Disciple of Life. Disciple of Life buffs your healing spells. It buffs it by 2 plus the spell's level for each healing spell that you cast. We're casting 1 healing spell that is Healing Word, so it's going to buff it by 3 or 4 if you upcast it. That's nice. It actually adds quite a lot to the Healing Word spell. But, as I've said, most of the value of a heal isn't coming from the numerical value of a heal. And this is buffing the numerical value. So, it's good, but it's not game-changing. The Healing Word spell for Life Clerics is just a little bit better than Healing Word on every other cleric. Now let's look at the Life Cleric's domain spells. At level 1, they get Bless and Cure Wounds. Now, as I've said, we will never cast Cure Wounds, so you can just forget about it. Bless is something that clerics get access to anyways, and of course we will be spamming it, but I prefer to have your domain spells be something new to the cleric class rather than something clerics already get. So, kind of a disappointment for your level 1 domain spells in the life domain. But let's move on to level 2. At level 2, life domains, just like every other domain, are going to get a unique Channel Divinity option. The life domain's Channel Divinity is called Preserve Life. Preserve Life is an AoE heal. Every ally within 9 meters of you is healed 3 times your cleric level in hit points. Now, even though I sometimes call Channel Divinities spells, because it's useful to think of them as spells, they aren't technically spells. So Preserve Life does not benefit from the Disciple of Life feature that life domains get, which boosts healing. Nevertheless, this is quite a lot of healing. It's functioning off of 2 multipliers. It's multiplied by your level, and then by each ally targeted with the spell. And every ally within 9 meters of you is a pretty reliable AoE. It can hit lots of your allies. Remember also, as a Channel Divinity, this can be used once per short rest, so there's the potential to use this 3 times per long rest. I do the math on my class tier list review of this subclass for how much potential healing this is per long rest. It's quite a lot. Preserve Life is adding a lot of durability to your team, and most importantly, this is something that can be used in every fight. What you really want from a Channel Divinity is consistency. Because remember, Turn Undead, the other option that you get with your Channel Divinity, is good but situational. And if you go through a short rest without fighting any undead, you can waste this entire spell slot. So having something that consistently works means you can consistently get use out of this Channel Divinity slot. Then at level 3, Life Domain Clerics get 2 bonus level 2 spells. And the 2 that they get access to are Aid and Lesser Restoration. Again, disappointingly, 2 spells that are already in the Cleric list. I don't have much to say about this. It's disappointing again. Overall, I would give this subclass a B tier. It's good, but not great. Disciple of Life and Preserve Life are both good features, but its domain spells just don't add anything to the Cleric base class. If life domains are the dedicated healers of the Cleric list, light domains are the dedicated damage dealers. Let's look at their features. At level 1, light clerics get Warding Flare as their kind of standalone feature. Warding Flare uses your reaction to impose disadvantage on an attacker, which might cause them to miss, right? In tabletop, this is used. You can use this per short rest an amount of times equal to your wisdom modifier, I believe. And I think it's the same in Baldur's Gate 3, but I should do more testing on that to confirm. Either way, this is a really strong feature. Imposing disadvantage on an attack is a severe debuff to accuracy. And remember, not getting hit is really important for clerics who want to maintain their concentration so that they can keep Bless going for an entire fight, right? Also, reactions are just so rarely used. As I was saying before, typically the only use you'll get out of a reaction is on attacks of opportunity, and that's such a waste of an action slot. But here, the light clerics can use it consistently because you should be getting attacked fairly regularly as a cleric. What about their domain spells at level 1? Light clerics get Burning Hands, which is a short-range AoE fire damage spell, and they get Fairy Fire. Let's start by talking about Fairy Fire. Fairy Fire is a very strong debuff that nevertheless requires concentration, and I think of it as the Druid's equivalent to Bless. The debuff is that targets who fail their dexterity saving throw in the area, you have advantage on attack rolls against them, which is very strong. As strong as that is, Bless is better, and since both are competing for your concentration, you likely will not be casting Fairy Fire unless for some reason you have another cleric in the party who's already casting Bless. Burning Hands, though, is cool. It might not seem cool at first because it's just a AoE fire damage spell, but what really makes it cool is its interaction with certain items that are in Baldur's Gate 3. Actually, really just one item in particular, which when you are wearing it and you deal fire damage with a spell, it gives you an extra bonus action. An extra bonus action is really strong because 5e is a game about action economy, and so you're just getting an injection of an extra action type. Sadly, light clerics right now don't get a very valuable use of their bonus action. At least not one consistently. Of course, Healing Word is a very valuable use of your bonus action, but it's only very valuable when there are targets who are on death's door. But you can still use Burning Hands right now because it's guaranteed fire damage to proc an extra bonus attack, which you can use with an offhand if you're dual wielding to get a little bit of damage. However, on full release, I fully expect for the spell Spiritual Weapon to be implemented, which does even more damage on a bonus action. And the combination of Burning Hands and Spiritual Weapon will turn the Light Cleric into a very powerful, sustained DPS build. The Light Domain's unique channel divinity is called Radiance of Dawn, and this is so good. By far the best channel divinity available in Baldur's Gate 3 so far. It's basically an AoE nuke spell. It hits all enemy targets that you can see within 9 meters of you, which is a very wide area of effect. You can very easily hit 3 or more targets with this. And each one targeted takes 2d10 plus your cleric level radiant damage. On average, this is 15 at level 4. This is 15 average radiant damage on a failed save. And it will do half of that on a successful save. This is one of the best AoE damage spells in the game. And it's a unique channel divinity for the light domain. In fact, there's only one AoE damage spell that's better than this. That is Cloud of Daggers. Radiance of Dawn is a close second. And remember, you can use this, because it's a channel divinity, 3 times per long rest. So this plus the Burning Hands that you get at level 1, it's adding a 3rd tactical role to the Light Domain Cleric. Already they were a supporter with a secondary controller, and now they have a tertiary striker, because their damage is insane. Finally, the level 2 bonus spells that the Light Domain gets are Flaming Sphere and Scorching Ray. Both of these are S tier damage spells that the Cleric otherwise wouldn't get access to. Now, personally, I do not like casting Flaming Spear because I find its implementation in Baldur's Gate 3 to be really wonky. It's kind of like a summon, and there's all sorts of weird things that happens because of that. Nevertheless, it is consistent fire damage, and it gets its own action. So anytime you're getting damage on a separate action other than yours, it's always going to be really strong. Scorching Ray is the premier striking spell because it does damage in 3 rays, making 3 separate attacks. The reason this is so good, one has to do with accuracy. If you're making 3 separate attacks, you're going to be doing consistent damage because you're less likely to miss all 3 than you would be to miss one attack that just did a lot of damage. But the real value of making 3 separate attacks with one spell is when you can stack damage per hit. There are a few ways to stack damage per hit in Baldur's Gate 3. There are ways in items, but the primary way is through the spell Hex, which, of course, does 1d6 damage per hit. And if you hit all 3 Scorching Rays, that's adding 3d6 damage on extra damage to this spell. There is also a weapon action, which imposes a condition, which will do 2 piercing damage per hit on a target. So that'll be adding another 2 per Scorching Ray hit, so possibly 6 extra damage to this spell. When you add up all the ways that you can add damage per hit to the Scorching Ray spell, the damage just balloons. It becomes one of the most effective single target damage combos in the game. Remember also, it's a ranged attack spell, which means it benefits from high ground and the ease of stealth proccing advantage on all of your attacks. Really, it's just a power gamer's dream. The only disadvantage, and this is a disadvantage to 3 of the Light Domain's bonus spells, is that they do fire damage. Now, the reason this is a disadvantage is, remember, one of the fantastic spells that clerics get access to, Create Water. Create Water makes enemies vulnerable to lightning and cold, but makes them resistant to fire. So there's a little bit of dyssynergy within the Light Domain class, where clerics want to build towards doing lightning or cold damage, and they don't want to build, they're disincentivized to build fire damage, but here's a Light Domain cleric dealing just tons of fire damage. The dyssynergy hurts, but it's still a cleric with all of the benefits of the cleric base class, plus just tons of damage, both single target and AoE. I give this subclass an A tier, although it's right on the border of being S tier. And on top of the S tier base class of the cleric, it makes the Light Domain cleric in particular one of the strongest class combinations in early access so far. All that remains now is the Trickery Domain, which is Shadowheart's subclass, so likely you won't be making a lot of Trickery Domain player characters, but it is still the domain that most players will play the most. So let's talk about it. The Trickery Domain's standalone feature is called Blessing of the Trickster. This is actually a single target buff that you can cast at will. It doesn't require any spell slots or anything like that. However, it does take an action and it takes up your concentration. What it does is it gives advantage on stealth checks to one ally, and it cannot be yourself. Stealth checks are pretty valuable, and mostly they are used outside of combat. Actually, that's not true. They're very often used inside of combat to get advantage on ranged attacks. That's how I typically use them. Nevertheless, Blessing of the Trickster will be used mostly outside of combat, because while it's useful, because it takes an action and your concentration, it's just never going to be better than just casting and maintaining concentration on Bless. So think of this as a useful feature for sneaking around outside of combat. Bonus spells that the Trickery Domain gets at level 1 are Charm Person, which is a very, very underwhelming crowd control spell. I don't even want to talk about it. Just read my review of it on my spell tier list. All you need to know is that it sucks. Then you also get Disguise Self. Disguise Self is a completely roleplay spell. It doesn't do anything inside of combat. So both of these are extremely lackluster. The Trickery Domain's unique Channel Divinity is called Invoke Duplicity. The Trickery Domain's Channel Divinity is called Invoke Duplicity. What this does is it takes an action to cast and also your concentration. And it summons an illusion, which distracts enemies in a 3-meter radius around it, which is basically melee range. It's a little more than melee range. So when an ally is attacking a target within 3 meters of the Invoke Duplicity, they have advantage on attack rolls, and advantage on attack rolls is really good. However, this spell is just crippled by the fact that it requires concentration, which is so valuable for clerics, as I've said several times now in this video. It's just not worth it to cast Invoke Duplicity when you could be casting Bless. So the only time I ever use this Channel Divinity is when I've just run out of spell slots and maybe I didn't feel like resting. It's really a shame because, as I said before, you want your Channel Divinity to be broadly useful because your default option, Turn Undead, is very specifically useful. But with the Trickery Domain, I find I can go through entire runs and only use its Channel Divinity once or twice. It's just too bad. It's really too bad. Now you're probably thinking that the Trickery Domain is a complete bust, and you would be right if it didn't get access to its phenomenal level 2 bonus spells. Let's go through them one at a time. The first is Mirror Image. Mirror Image increases your armor class by 9. Yeah, that's right, by 9. But really it's 3 sets of 3. It creates 3 illusions. Each one boosts your armor class by 3. And then when somebody misses you, it cancels one of the illusions, dropping your armor class by 3 until all 3 are gone and you're back to base. Mirror Image lasts 10 turns and does not require concentration. And this is what's so crucial about it. Remember, avoiding hits means maintaining concentration. And because this doesn't take concentration, you can pair it with Bless or Hold Person, all of those extremely valuable concentration spells that clerics have. So getting access to Mirror Image, on top of being able to use a shield, means the Cleric can avoid so many hits. The Trickery Domain Cleric can avoid so many hits. And it's really, really easy to overlook how good that is. The second bonus spell that it gets is Pass Without a Trace. Pass Without a Trace is a team buff that gives everyone on your team plus 10 bonus to their stealth checks. It also affects the caster, so Shadowheart will be getting it as well. Until your next long rest, or for as long as you maintain concentration, you get plus 10 bonus to stealth checks. Plus 10 is a lot. It's an overwhelming amount. This practically guarantees stealth. And it stacks with other kinds of bonus, like advantage on stealth checks from I'm forgetting the name now, but Blessing of the Trickster, pardon me. Although both will take concentration, so keep that in mind. It stacks with proficiency bonus if you have characters that are proficient in stealth. They now have a plus 12 to their stealth checks. Stealth is actually really strong in Baldur's Gate 3, and Pass Without a Trace, along with some other features, makes stealthing so good it's almost cheesy to use. So in most of my runs, I don't even cast Pass Without a Trace. It trivializes so many fights. But really, if we're looking at the Trickster class, you have to say this is a big boost. In fact, these two spells on their own are so good that I give the Trickery Domain as a whole a B tier. I think it's about as good as the Life Domain Cleric, even just from mirror image. But certainly not as strong as the Light Domain, which is the premier subclass for clerics. And that is the phenomenal Cleric class, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe, because it's one of a series of videos that I release weekly, where I review and rank every class and subclass available so far in Baldur's Gate 3 Early Access. Again, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next week.